40 million people. That is how many human beings died because of one man. More than World War I. More than the Black Death in Europe. 10% of everyone alive on Earth was killed because of his armies. He was abandoned as a child, left to die on the frozen steppe. His family ate rats and roots to survive. He killed his own brother when he was just a teenager. And yet, by the time he died, he ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen. An empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Europe. An empire built on blood and bones and absolute terror. 16 million men alive today carry his DNA. 1 in every 200 men on Earth is his descendant. He had so many children with so many women that his bloodline spread across entire continents. When he died, they killed everyone who saw the funeral procession. They buried him in a secret location and killed the soldiers who dug the grave. They diverted a river to hide the spot forever. 800 years later, we still have not found his body. This is the story of the man who conquered the world. The man who rose from nothing to become everything. The man they called the punishment of God. This is the story of Genghis Khan. In the year 1162, on the harsh and frozen steppes of Mongolia, a child was born. His mother Holan had been kidnapped just months before. She was riding with her first husband when a young warrior named Yasuge saw her beauty and decided to take her for himself. That was the way of Mongol tribe. The strong took what they wanted. Now she was giving birth in Yasuge's camp. A boy, her first child with her captor. But something was strange about this birth. When the baby emerged, he was holding something in his tiny fist. A blood clot, dark and solid, clutched in his hand as if he refused to let it go. The shamans gathered around and stared at this omen. A child born holding blood. They whispered their prophecy. This child would be a great warrior. This child would spill the blood of nations. They named him Temujin, after a Tatar chief that Yasuge had just defeated in battle. A name taken from a conquered enemy. A name that meant iron. The child had arrived. For the first 9 years of his life, Temujin lived as a prince. His father, Yasuge, was chief of the Borgian clan, not the most powerful tribe, but respected. They had horses and warriors and a place in the endless politics of the Mongolian steppe. Temujin was betrothed to a girl named Bert when he was just 9 years old. Her family was from a powerful tribe, and the marriage would create an important alliance. His father left him there to live with his future bride's family, as was the custom. But on the way home, Yasuge stopped at a Tatar camp. The Tatars were old enemies. Yasuge had raided their camps and killed their warriors. He had even named his son after a Tatar chief he defeated. They recognized him, and they smiled and invited him to eat. Mongol hospitality was sacred. A guest at your fire was protected. To harm a guest was unthinkable. The Tatars did not care. They poisoned his food. Slowly, carefully, they let him leave. They let him ride toward home, and they let the poison do its work. Yasuge made it back to his tribe. Barely. He was dying, and he knew it. He sent for his son, but by the time 9-year-old Temujin arrived, his father was dead, and everything changed. Without Yasuge, the clan had no strong leader. Temujin was just a boy. He could not command warriors. He could not protect the tribe. So the tribe made a decision. They abandoned the family. The warriors, the herds, the horses, the power. All of it went to other leaders, other families. And Temujin, his mother, his brothers, and his half-brothers were left behind. Left with nothing. Left to die. This was the harsh reality of the Mongolian steppe. There was no room for weakness. No mercy for those who could not fight. A widow with young children was a burden. Better to let them starve than waste resources keeping them alive. Holland screamed at the departing warriors. She cursed them. She called them cowards and traitors. She waved the clan banner and demanded they return. They did not look back. And so a mother and her children found themselves alone in one of the harshest environments on Earth, with winter coming. They should have died. Everyone expected them to die. They did not die. Holland was not an ordinary woman. She had been kidnapped from her first husband. She had been forced to marry her captor. She had watched everything taken from her again and again. She taught her children to fish in the freezing rivers. She showed them which roots and berries could be eaten. She caught rats and marmots. She dug through snow to find frozen plants. When they had nothing, she found something. When they were starving, she found food. When they wanted to give up, she made them stand. She told Temujin something he would never forget. She told him that the only people you could truly trust were your family. Everyone else would betray you. Everyone else would abandon you when you needed them most. Look at what the tribe had done. Look at how quickly they left. Remember this. Remember this forever. Temujin remembered, but he also learned another lesson, a darker lesson, a lesson about power and survival that would shape everything he became. When Temujin was about 13 or 14 years old, there was a dispute over food. Some say it was a fish. Some say it was a bird that had been shot. Whatever it was, Temujin's half-brother Begder claimed it for himself. Begder was older, stronger, and he had been asserting dominance over the family. Perhaps he thought he should lead since he was eldest. Perhaps he was simply cruel. Temujin and his full brother Kasar went to their mother. She told them to stop fighting. There were so few of them left. They could not afford to turn on each other. Temujin did not listen. He and Kasar took their bows. They found Begder sitting on a hilltop. They approached from two sides, front and back, like hunting an animal. Begder saw them. He saw the arrows pointed at him. He understood what was about to happen, and he did not run. He sat there and told them to do what they came to do. But remember, he said, without me, you will have no one left but your shadows. Think about what you are doing. They shot him anyway. When Holland found out, she was consumed with rage. She screamed at Temujin. She called him a murderer. She said he was like a wild animal, like a wolf that eats its own pack. You have killed your brother, she cried. Now who will fight beside you? Now who do you have? Temujin said nothing. He had made his choice. Begder was a threat. Begder challenged his authority. And so Begder had to die. It was cold. It was brutal. It was the law of the steppe. And it was only the beginning. The murder attracted attention. A nearby tribe called the Tayeshi-Ud had been watching the outcast family. They were related to Temujin's father, but had been part of the abandonment. Now they saw a problem. This boy had killed his own brother. He was dangerous. He was growing. One day he might seek revenge for what had been done to his family. Better to deal with him now. They came in force. Warriors on horseback. Temujin ran, but there was nowhere to run. They caught him and bound him. They put a wooden kang around his neck, a heavy wooden collar that locked his head and hands in place. He could not feed himself. He could not lie down properly. He was a prisoner, humiliated and helpless. For days he was held captive, displayed like an animal. The Tayeshi-Ud debated what to do with him. Kill him? Keep him as a slave? Then one night, during a festival when the guards were drinking, Temujin saw his chance. He knocked a guard unconscious with the heavy wooden collar. He ran into the darkness. He could not remove the kang, so he fled wearing it. He found a river, and lay down in the water, hiding with only his face above the surface. A man from the tribe found him there, a simple herder. He looked at the boy in the water with the wooden collar around his neck. He could have called the warriors. He could have earned a reward. Instead, he said nothing. He walked away. That night, he came back. He brought his sons. They broke the collar and hid Temujin in a cart of wool. For days they kept him hidden while warriors searched. Finally, they gave him a horse and sent him away. Temujin never forgot this man. He never forgot this family that risked everything to save him. Years later, when he had power, he would reward them beyond their dreams. But he also never forgot the Taishiad. He never forgot that they had tried to destroy him. And when the time came, he would destroy them instead. After his escape, Temujin reunited with his family. He was perhaps 16 years old. He owned almost nothing. He had no warriors, no horses, no power. But he had a betrothed. Bert was still waiting. Her family had not broken the engagement, despite everything that had happened. Temujin traveled to claim his bride. They married, and by all accounts, it was a genuine love match. In a world where marriages were political tools, where women were often kidnapped or traded, Temujin and Bert had real affection for each other. She would remain his primary wife for the rest of his life. She would be his most trusted advisor. Her sons would be his only legitimate heirs. But their happiness was about to be shattered. The Merkid tribe came without warning. They were old enemies of Temujin's family. Years before, Temujin's father had stolen Holland from a Merkid man. Now the Merkids wanted revenge. They attacked the camp. Temujin and his brothers fled on the few horses they had. There were not enough horses for everyone. Bert was left behind. She was captured, taken, given to a Merkid warrior as a prize. Temujin hid in the mountains for 3 days. He survived, but he had lost his wife, the woman he loved, taken just as his mother had been taken years before. And now he faced a choice. He could accept it. He could try to survive with what little he had. He could let his wife go, or he could fight. He chose to fight, but he could not fight alone. He had no army. He had no power. So he went to find someone who did. Togrul Khan was the leader of the powerful Carrot tribe. He had been blood brothers with Temujin's father Yasuge. They had sworn oaths together, fought together. Temujin went to him and reminded him of that oath. He presented Bert's dowry, a valuable coat of black sable fur, as a gift, and he asked for help. Togrul agreed. He called his warriors, 20,000 men. Temujin also reached out to his childhood friend Jamuka. They had played together as boys. They had sworn blood brotherhood, mixing their blood and promising eternal friendship. Shamuka brought his own warriors. Together, they attacked the Merkids at dawn. The raid was swift and brutal. The Merkids were scattered. Their camp was destroyed. And Temujin found Bert. She was alive. But something had happened during her captivity. Something that would haunt Temujin forever. She was pregnant. When the child was born, they named him Joki. The name meant guest or unexpected visitor. A name that carried a question within it. Was Joki truly Temujin's son? Or was he the child of the Merkid who had captured Bert? Temujin made a decision that would define his character. He accepted Joki as his own son, publicly, completely. He declared that Joki was his firstborn and would be treated as such. But the whispers never stopped. For the rest of Joki's life, people questioned his blood. His brothers would throw the doubt in his face during arguments. The uncertainty poisoned everything. And yet Temujin never wavered. He had claimed the boy. That was enough. That was final. This was the man Temujin was becoming. A man who made decisions and never looked back. A man who valued loyalty above all else. A man who would not let whispers and doubts change his course. The rescue of Bert changed everything. Temujin had proven himself. He had called on powerful allies, and they had answered. He had led a successful raid. Word spread across the steppe. There was a young man of the Borshigan clan. He had been abandoned. He had been captured. He had lost everything, and he was rising. Warriors began to come to him, not because of his bloodline or his wealth. He had neither. They came because they saw something in him. Strength, vision, the promise of something greater. And Temujin offered them something revolutionary, something that had never been done before. He promoted based on ability, not birth. In the tribal world of Mongolia, your status was determined by your family. Noble blood meant power. Common birth meant servitude. That was the way it had always been. Temujin rejected this entirely. He took men from common families, from conquered tribes, even from enemy clans. If they were loyal and capable, he raised them up. If they could fight and lead, he gave them command. A blacksmith's son could become a general. A captured enemy could become a trusted commander. What mattered was not where you came from, but what you could do. This was revolutionary, and it was incredibly effective. The sons of nobles served for prestige. The sons of commoners served for survival. But the men who served Temujin served for the chance to become something more. They were loyal, not because of tradition, but because of opportunity. An army of the hungry, an army of the ambitious, an army of men with everything to gain. Among those who came to Temujin was a man who had been his enemy. During a battle, an arrow had struck Temujin's horse in the neck, nearly killing him. After the battle was won, Temujin demanded to know who had shot that arrow. A warrior stepped forward. He admitted it freely. He had shot the arrow. He had aimed for Temujin himself, but hit the horse instead. Temujin's men waited for the order of execution. Instead, Temujin smiled. He admired the man's honesty. He admired his skill. And he admired his courage in admitting what he had done. He gave the warrior a new name, Jeeb. It meant arrow. And Jeeb became one of the greatest generals in history. He would lead armies across continents. He would never lose a battle. And he would serve Temujin with absolute loyalty until his death. This was how Temujin built his power. Not through fear alone, but through opportunity. Be loyal to me, he said, and I will raise you higher than you ever dreamed. Betray me, and I will destroy you and everyone you love. Simple, effective, terrifying. As Temujin's power grew, so did the tension with his blood brother Jamuka. They had been close once. They had sworn oaths together. They had fought side by side to rescue Bert. But two ambitious men cannot share one world. They began to drift apart. Then they began to compete. Different tribes aligned with one or the other. The friendship became rivalry. The rivalry became war. For years they fought. Jamuka would win a battle. Temujin would win the next. Tribes switched sides. Alliances formed and broke. But Temujin had something Jamuka did not. He had a vision that went beyond tribal politics. He did not just want to be chief of a tribe. He wanted to unite all the tribes under one rule. One by one, Temujin defeated or absorbed his rivals. The Tatars who had poisoned his father were conquered and destroyed. He killed every Tatar man taller than a cart axle. The tribe that had murdered his father ceased to exist. The Tayashiad who had imprisoned him were next. He hunted them down. He showed no mercy. They had tried to destroy him when he was weak. Now he returned the favor. Finally, only Jamuka remained. The final battle was decisive. Jamukha's forces were scattered. His allies abandoned him. He fled with just a handful of followers. In the end, those followers betrayed him. They bound their own leader and brought him to Temujin, hoping for rewards. Temujin looked at his old blood brother, bound and defeated. The man he had played with as a child. The man who had helped him rescue his wife. The man he had loved like a brother before politics and ambition drove them apart. Then he looked at the men who had betrayed Jamukha, and he made an offer. "Join me," he said. "We were blood brothers once. Let us be united again. Ride beside me, and we will rule the world together." Jamukha refused. "There cannot be two suns in the sky," he said. "There cannot be two Khans on the steppe. We both know this. Kill me, but do it with honor. Kill me without spilling my blood." In Mongol tradition, blood was sacred. Noble death meant death without bloodshed. Broken spine, suffocation, crushing. Temujin granted his old friend this final request. Jamukha was wrapped in felt blankets and crushed. He died without a drop of blood falling to the earth. Some say Temujin wept that night. Some say he sat alone in his tent and remembered the children they had been. Before power, before war, before everything. But when morning came, he emerged with dry eyes. There was work to be done. In the year 1206, all the Mongol tribes gathered for a great assembly called a Kurultai. There were no more rivals, no more competing chiefs. For the first time in history, the Mongolian steppe was united under one leader. The shamans performed their rituals. The warriors raised their standards. And the assembled tribes proclaimed a single man as their supreme ruler. They gave him a new name, a name that would echo through history, a name that would become synonymous with conquest and terror. Genghis Khan. The name meant universal ruler, or oceanic ruler, a ruler whose power stretched as far as the endless sea. He was approximately 44 years old. He had survived abandonment, starvation, imprisonment, and decades of warfare. He had risen from nothing to command the most powerful cavalry force the world had ever seen. And he was just getting started. The first target was Western Shui, a kingdom south of Mongolia ruled by the Tangut people. They had wealth in cities and walled fortifications. The Mongols had never attacked such targets before. They were masters of the open steppe, of cavalry warfare, of hit-and-run tactics. Siege warfare was something else entirely. They would learn. The campaign against Western Xia was difficult. The Mongols struggled against walls and fortifications. But they adapted. They learned to redirect rivers to flood cities. They learned to starve defenders out. They captured engineers and made them teach siege techniques. By 1210, Western Xia had submitted. They paid tribute and promised to provide troops when called. Genghis had his first conquest, but it was just a warm-up. The real target was the Jin dynasty of northern China. The Jin had ruled over the Mongols for generations. They had demanded tribute. They had played tribes against each other. They had treated the steppe peoples like barbarian subjects. Now the barbarians were coming for them. In 1211, Genghis led perhaps 100,000 warriors south. The Jin had more soldiers. They had massive walls. They had generations of civilization and technology behind them. It did not matter. At the Battle of Badger Mouth, the Jin assembled a huge army to stop the Mongols in a mountain pass. It was a strong defensive position. The Jin commanders were confident. Genghis sent a force around the mountains, through paths that were considered impassable. While the Jin waited for a frontal assault, the Mongols appeared behind them. The Jin army was destroyed completely. The path to China lay open. For 4 years, the Mongols ravaged northern China. City after city fell. The Jin capital of Zhengdu, the city we now call Beijing, was besieged. When it finally fell in 1215, the destruction was absolute. The city burned for a month. The bodies piled so high that they were said to form mountains. The grease from decomposing corpses made the ground slippery for miles. A Persian ambassador who visited later wrote that he saw hills of bones outside the city, the bones of the dead still white in the sun. The Jin dynasty was not completely destroyed. They retreated south and would hold on for another 2 decades. But their power was broken. Northern China belonged to the Mongols, and Genghis Khan was only beginning. In 1218, something happened that would change the course of history. Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan to the Khwarezmian Empire. This was a vast realm covering modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and more. It was ruled by Shah Muhammad II, who styled himself the greatest monarch on earth. The caravan carried valuable goods and a message of peace. Genghis wanted to establish trade relations. The Silk Road ran through Khwarezmian territory. There was profit to be made by all. The caravan arrived at the border city of Otrar. The governor, a man named Inal-Huk, looked at the Mongol merchants. He saw their goods, their gold, their silver, and he saw an opportunity. He accused them of being spies. He had them arrested, and he had them all executed. Their goods were seized. Their heads were displayed on spikes. When Genghis heard what had happened, he did not immediately go to war. He sent ambassadors to Shah Muhammad, proper ambassadors with diplomatic status. He demanded that the governor be handed over for punishment. In diplomacy, ambassadors were sacred. They carried the voice of their ruler. To harm an ambassador was to harm the king himself. Shah Muhammad made his decision. He had one ambassador executed. The others he humiliated by burning their beards and sending them back. This was the greatest mistake anyone ever made. When the ambassadors returned to Genghis Khan, something changed in him. Those who saw him said his face went still and cold. Without a word, he left his tent and climbed a nearby mountain. He stayed there for 3 days, alone, communing with the sky god Tengri. When he came down, he had made his decision. He would destroy the Khwarezmian Empire, not defeat it, not conquer it, destroy it, utterly, completely, so thoroughly that it would never rise again. This would not be a war for territory. This would be a punishment. In 1219, Genghis Khan assembled the largest Mongol army ever, perhaps 150,000 warriors. Every able man was called. This was total war. They marched west, across mountains and deserts, through terrain that should have been impassable for such a force. And they appeared where the Shah least expected them. The Shah had concentrated his forces to defend the obvious routes, but the Mongols came from multiple directions at once. They seemed to be everywhere. The Shah's intelligence networks reported impossible things. Mongol armies appearing in places they could not possibly reach. The Mongols had spent years preparing. They had sent spies and merchants throughout the empire. They knew every road, every fortress, every weakness. And now they exploited them all. The city of Otrar, where the merchants had been killed, was the first target. It was besieged and taken. Governor Inal-Huk was captured alive. They saved him for a special death. Molten silver was poured into his eyes and ears. Let him see the riches he killed for. Let him hear the screams of those he murdered. It was just the beginning. Bukhara was one of the greatest cities of the Islamic world, a center of learning and culture, home to hundreds of thousands of people. Genghis Khan rode into the city on horseback. He rode into the great mosque itself, his horse's hooves echoing on the sacred floor. He looked at the terrified scholars and imams gathered there. "I am the punishment of God," he declared. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. The city was looted. The population was massacred or enslaved. The libraries burned. Centuries of knowledge turned to ash. Samarkand, the jewel of Central Asia, fell next. One of the most magnificent cities on earth. It surrendered in just 5 days. The Mongols killed so many people that they separated them into groups to be executed more efficiently. The Shah fled. He ran from city to city, always one step ahead of the Mongol pursuit. Genghis sent his 2 best generals, Jib and Subutai, to hunt him down. They chased him for months, across his crumbling empire, past cities that burned behind him, through deserts and mountains. Shah Muhammad II, who had called himself the greatest monarch on earth, died alone on a small island in the Caspian Sea. Some say disease killed him. Some say it was simply despair. He had lost everything because he had killed a few merchants. But the conquest did not stop with his death. The Shah's son, Jalal ad-Din, tried to continue the resistance. He was the only enemy commander to ever defeat a Mongol force in open battle. At one point, he drove them back across a river, something no one had done before. Genghis respected him for it. When they finally cornered Jalal ad-Din at the Indus River, and the prince escaped by jumping his horse off a cliff into the raging waters. Below, Genghis did not order pursuit. "He is a brave man," he said. "I wish my own sons had such courage." He let him go, but he did not let the empire go. City after city was destroyed. Urgench, the Khwarezmian capital, suffered one of the worst fates. The city was built on soft ground, impossible to destroy by conventional means. So the Mongols diverted the river. They flooded the city while the inhabitants still lived there. Then they demolished every building, stone by stone. The ground was returned to swamp. The city ceased to exist. Historians estimate that the Mongol conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire killed between 10 and 15 million people. Some estimates go as high as 20 million. To put that in perspective, the entire population of England at that time was about 3 million. This was death on a scale the world had never seen. And it was deliberate. It was calculated. It was meant to send a message. Do not defy Genghis Khan. Do not harm his people. Do not betray his trust, or this will happen to you. While Genghis Khan ravaged the Khwarezmian Empire, his generals Jib and Subutai were given a special mission. Take 20,000 men, circle the Caspian Sea, find out what lies beyond, and return to report. It was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission. It became one of the greatest military campaigns in history. Jib and Subutai rode north through Persia. They crossed into the Caucasus Mountains, territory that had never seen Mongol horsemen. They defeated the Kingdom of Georgia, one of the most powerful Christian states in the region. They crossed the mountains in winter. They emerged in the lands of the Russian princes. The Russians had never heard of Mongols. They had no idea what was coming. When scouts reported a strange army approaching, the princes gathered their forces and rode out to meet them. At the Battle of the Kalka River in 1223, the Mongols demonstrated their terrifying tactics. They pretended to retreat. The Russians, thinking they had won, pursued in disorder. The Mongols led them on for days, stretching their supply lines, exhausting their horses. Then they turned and attacked. The Russian army was annihilated. Princes were captured and laid on the ground. The Mongols placed wooden boards over them and sat down to feast on top. The princes were slowly crushed to death while the Mongols ate dinner above them. It was a message, a demonstration, a preview of what was to come. Jib and Subutai did not stay to conquer Russia. That was not their mission. They gathered intelligence, drew maps, identified weaknesses. Then they rode back to Mongolia. The entire journey covered over 5,500 miles. They had been gone for 3 years. They had defeated every army they faced, and they returned with knowledge that would be used in future invasions. Jeeb died on the journey home, but Subbatai survived. He would use what he learned to plan the Mongol invasion of Europe 2 decades later, an invasion that nearly succeeded. By the mid-1220s, Genghis Khan ruled an empire larger than any before it. From the Pacific coast to the Caspian Sea, millions of square miles, countless peoples and cultures. He was in his 60s now, old for that era, old for a life of warfare and hardship. But there was one final score to settle. Western Shah, the kingdom that had submitted years before, had refused to send troops for the Khwarezmian campaign. When Genghis had called, they had made excuses. They had not honored their oath. To Genghis Khan, this was betrayal. And betrayal could not go unpunished. In 1226, he led his army against Western Shah one final time. The campaign was brutal. City after city fell. The Tangut people were slaughtered without mercy. Genghis had ordered that they be destroyed, so completely that future generations would not even remember they existed. But during this campaign, something happened. The sources disagree on exactly what. Some say Genghis fell from his horse during a hunt. Some say he was wounded in battle. Some say he contracted a sudden illness. There are even whispers of assassination. One legend says a captured Tangut princess was brought to his tent. She hid a blade and attacked him. Or perhaps she hid poison. Or perhaps she caused an infection through other means. We will never know the truth. What we know is that Genghis Khan began to weaken. He was dying, and he knew it. He gathered his sons and generals. He gave them final instructions. Finish the campaign against Western Shah, destroy them completely, and keep my death secret until it is done. He told them how to divide the empire among his sons. Joki had died earlier that year, possibly murdered, so his lands would go to his sons. Chagatai would take Central Asia. Pidai would become Great Khan, supreme ruler over all. Tolui would hold the Mongolian homeland. He warned them about the importance of unity. One arrow can be easily broken, he said, but many arrows bundled together are unbreakable. Stay united, and no one can defeat you. Turn on each other, and you will all fall. On August 18, 1227, Genghis Khan died. He was approximately 65 years old. He had risen from an abandoned child eating rats on the steppe to become the ruler of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. And now he was gone, but his final orders remained. His death was kept secret. The campaign against Western Shah continued. The Tangut people were massacred to the last. Their cities were razed. Their culture was erased. When the campaign was finished, the body of Genghis Khan was carried back to Mongolia. And then came the funeral. Every person who encountered the funeral procession was killed. Soldiers, herders, travelers. Anyone who saw the body passing was executed. The secret of where he was going could not be allowed to spread. The burial site was chosen somewhere in the sacred mountains of Mongolia, perhaps near Birken-Kulden, the mountain where he had hidden as a young man, perhaps somewhere else entirely. Soldiers dug the grave. They buried their Khan with treasures and honors. Then those soldiers were killed by other soldiers. And those soldiers may have been killed as well. Horses were driven back and forth across the site to obscure any trace. According to some accounts, a river was diverted to flow over the burial spot. Trees were planted. Every sign of the grave was erased. 800 years later, we still have not found it. Archaeologists have searched. Treasure hunters have searched. Governments have mounted expeditions. Technology has improved to the point where we can see beneath the earth itself. Nothing. Genghis Khan lies somewhere in the mountains of Mongolia. Unmarked, unknown, one of the greatest mysteries of history. Perhaps that is how he wanted it. A final secret, a final act of power. Even in death, he controls what the world can know about him. But while his body remains hidden, his legacy is everywhere. After his death, the empire continued to expand under his sons and grandsons. Gidai became Great Khan as his father wished. Under his rule, the Mongols finished the destruction of the Jin dynasty in China. They invaded Korea. They pushed into the Middle East. And in 1241, they invaded Europe. Subbatai, now an old man but still the greatest general alive, led the armies west. They smashed through Poland. They crushed the Hungarian army at the Battle of Moe. Europe lay open and defenseless. The Pope called for crusades. Kings panicked. There was nothing between the Mongols and the Atlantic Ocean that could stop them. And then Gidai died. Back in Mongolia from excessive drinking. His alcoholism had finally killed him. Mongol law required that all princes return to Mongolia to elect a new Great Khan. Subbatai had to withdraw. The armies pulled back. Europe was saved by a hangover. The Mongols never returned in force. But they came close. So close. Under Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, the Mongols conquered all of China and established the Yuan dynasty. For nearly a century, Mongol emperors sat on the Chinese throne. The Golden Horde, descendants of Jochi, ruled Russia for over 200 years. Russian princes had to kneel before Mongol Khans. The influence shaped Russian culture and politics for centuries. The Ilkhanate dominated Persia and the Middle East. They ended the Abbasid Caliphate, killing the last caliph by rolling him in a carpet and having horses trample him to death. The Chagatai Khanate ruled Central Asia. One of its descendants would be Timur, also called Tamerlane, who would build his own bloody empire. But eventually, all empires fall. The Yuan dynasty was overthrown by the Ming in 1368. The Ilkhanate collapsed from internal divisions. The Golden Horde fragmented. The Chagatai Khanate faded. By 1500, the Mongol Empire was gone, scattered into smaller khanates and absorbed by rising powers. But the impact remained. The Mongol conquests had killed perhaps 40 million people. Some historians argue for even higher numbers. The population of the world actually declined during the Mongol era. In some regions, it took centuries to recover. But the conquests also connected the world in ways it had never been connected before. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, made travel across Asia safer than it had ever been. Truth is probably both. The Mongol Empire brought death on an unimaginable scale, and it brought connection on an unprecedented scale. It destroyed worlds, and it built a new one. And at the center of it all was one man. A man who was abandoned as a child. A man who ate rats to survive. A man who killed his own brother and built an empire from nothing. A man who showed that with enough will, enough intelligence, and enough ruthlessness, anyone could conquer the world. Today, 16 million men carry his DNA. 1 in every 200 men on Earth is descended from Genghis Khan or his close male relatives. His legacy is literally in our blood. His empire is gone. His cities are ruins. His grave remains hidden. But his name is remembered. Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, the conqueror of the world, the punishment of God. He rose from nothing. He conquered everything, and the world has never forgotten him.